All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
And welcome to another episode of Chicago Junction. The radio program's all about the amazing world of railroadings, both the prototype and model railroading. I'm your announcer, Brian Ballou. And here is our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and the chief electrical engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, March the 20th year, 2019. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Thank you, John. And now, me taking as the substitute of our chief dispatcher, who's still out on medical leave. My name is Brian Ballou. I am a model railroader, mostly O-gauge and Garden. A volunteer for Operation Lifesaver. Belong to various clubs throughout the Chicago, Cincinnati, and across the United States area. and I'm going to try and keep everything under control.
And your photo is in a number of post offices around the country.
No, they've been slowly getting away, you know. the beard has kept them away. So as we speak, to my left, I have Mr.
Dave DeRuska, retired locomotive engineer. Last place I worked and slaved was Metra. A few other places before that. I do our website, the Chicago Junction program website. Not website, but Facebook page. And I'm also the guy who's trying to get Chicago to declare 2023 the 175th anniversary of the first train to run out of Chicago, the beginning of a great history of railroading in Chicago.
Let's hear it for our train.
Yay!
Well, I guess I'm next on the list. Okay, I'm John Peixoto. I'm just a guy from the west side of Chicago. Played with trains for a ton of years and know just about everybody in about 500 miles. Of course, usually if you mention my name, they go, "Oh, him."
That blank spot next to my picture at the post office.
Yes.
Good evening. My name's Kevin Berry. I'm a retired Chicago police sergeant. Almost a complete lifetime Lionel operator and collector. I started when I was 7 years old, so next year it'll be 70 years of doing it. I'm a director with the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club, and when I'm not busy playing with my trains, I'm trying to think up new dioramas to put up a little bit of color behind the tracks.
What did you do for the first 7 years?
I was unenlightened as to the good things in life.
It was known as the Marx era.
No, I just didn't know that there were Lionel trains until I was 7, and Santa was kind enough to bring me one. I knew there was a train set down at the museum, a real train set, not the HO set they have down there now. When I was a kid, there was still a big steam engine outside the museum.
Right.
It's up at Union now, and the submarine was still outside the museum.
And the Zephyr was out there
Zephyr
too.
was outside, yeah.
Everybody was outside,
Yep.
rotting away.
And the 999.
Yeah.
That,
It was inside,
the
wasn't it?
999
is
was
now.
inside.
Inside,
Was
because that
it-
was next to the layout.
I thought the
Thing.
I don't remember the 999
Close
being
to it.
outside, but I remember the big steamer and the Zephyr being outside.
Santa Fe 2903.
Big train.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have to
Now-
verify that, Brian.
Yes.
You know, I'm at the point where my memory isn't as good as it used to be.
I'm Ron Stock, retired librarian, train advocate, train lover, and HO modeler.
And
Great.
our keeper of the colored pens.
Yes. We got to have somebody do a description since we're on radio.
A color commentator?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
If football rates a color commentator, trains certainly should.
Yeah, right.
Well, shall we start off with a little bit of news?
The news.
Let's see what the real world's doing.
Well, Metro Board today, this is from February of 20th, approved a $70.9 million contract to purchase 15 remanufactured locomotives to begin to replace Metro's aging fleet. The contract with Progress Rail Locomotives of LaGrange includes options to buy up to 27 additional locomotives if funding is available. And what will those locomotives will be? They will be existing EMD SD70 MAC freight locomotives, upgraded and configured for passenger use. All components will be either refurbished, upgraded, or new. The newly remanufactured locomotives will be designated locomotives.
Locomotives?
Somebody didn't get a Starbucks.
Will be designated as SD70 Mach. Mach locomotives. They'll go at Mach speed down the track.
I just want to know what they'll call the fifth one. The Mach 5.
Mach 5. I don't know.
Go, Speed Racer, go, Speed Racer, go, Speed Racer, go!
God, this is...
You had to get them started.
Anyways, these wonderful remanufactured locomotives will meet the Environmental Protection Agency's Tier 3 emission standards, replacing 42 of Metro's current locomotives that are rated at a negative Tier 1, negative Tier 0. With 42 Tier 3 locomotives, it will eliminate 61 tons of nitrous oxide emissions annually in my backyard, which is right behind the Metro's tracks. So, and also Metro is opening up RFPs for new cars, and they're not asking that they be bi-level, like the bi-level cars they currently own. They're looking outside the box. Metro is looking outside the box, folks.
Ooh.
Write that down on this day. All right, I will yield the
Does
floor.
Union Station have enough trackage for 6 more cars on every commuter train? Because if they run 6 bi-levels and they go to single level, they're going to need to run 12.
It'll probably be still bi-level, but it won't be the standard bi-level center door loading configuration. They may move to a double door loading configuration. They'll always stick with bi-levels.
Yeah, well, like they do in the East.
Or in Canada,
They have...
Go Transit cars?
something like that.
Yeah, like Go Transit or what New Jersey Transit has. They have bi-levels running on the corridor. They're low level. But if you look where the doors are, they're on the ends.
Yeah, that's right. It's SEPTA?
New Jersey Transit.
NJ Transit.
Yeah,
But somebody else is using those cars too.
Long Island.
That's who it is.
Oh, here we go.
Septus doesn't have them yet, but
They're on order.
So they're gonna be short bi-levels?
No, that just look different. Here it says that they're reissuing its request for proposals for new rail cars. The previous request specified that the cars match Metra's current 50-year-old gallery design, and only one firm responded. Now the Chicagoland Commuter Rail Agency is broadening its request to include newer, better designs. Contemporary commuter coach designs offer countless benefits over Metra's retro gallery car design. Multiple doors per car with floors that are closer to the platform height is pictured. Well, we don't have the picture here from the article, but makes it for easier for getting on and off the train faster, and also especially with people with luggage, bicycles, and SUV baby carriers. So that's what they're opening up for differently designed. I'm sure there'll still be bi-levels, but they will be differently designed. I mean, given all the crowding problems that Metra has on the BNSF, I highly doubt they'd be going to single-level cars. Basically, they could start the train at out west in Aurora, and people could walk through the train all the way to Chicago.
After Naperville.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the news from Metro World.
Ooh.
And I will yield the floor again if anybody else has something.
Okay.
I can't think of anything that springs to mind. I'm sure something will float to the surface in the midst of our conversation.
So I walked into the Chicago Public Library yesterday and saw Chicago Magazine sitting there, and it said, it was all new restaurants to check out. Well, on page 71 and 72, under the Chicago Stories banner, was an article on the Train to Nowhere. And it was the author's reminiscences on the unlikely persistence and curious coolness of the Yellow Line. Skokie Swift. Some of us may have remembered hearing the conductor refer to it as the Emerald City Express. It's the shortest of all the CTA lines, and they got a beautiful nose-on photo of the old cream or white over green body and the Skokie banner hanging in the window opposite the operator's compartment. It's a nice article. The magazine's free, so stop at the library and grab it. And and there was another magazine with it entitled Indiana, and on page 12, that's the official Indiana travel guide for 2019. One-page article entitled "Insider on the Road: Track Stars." And it recommends 6 scenic railroads for you to take a ride on. The French Lick Scenic Railroad, the Whitewater Valley Railroad, the Nickel Plate Express, the Heston Steam Museum, the Amtrak Hoosier State Train, and the Garden Railway at Gabus Arboretum out in Valparaiso. That is supposed to be a fantastic arboretum, a good place to stretch your legs, and this is not the first time I've heard good things about the G-gauge layout out there.
Well, it used to be known as Tall Trees.
Yes.
And last year they changed the name when the people who actually bought the property and all and made it an arboretum decided to donate it and let somebody else run it. So they donated it to the northwestern extension of the Purdue University. Purdue is now in charge of what used to be Tall Trees, and and it's named now after the couple that donated the property.
Okay.
Well, they say the seasonal attraction, which includes several vignettes, including the Lincoln funeral train at Michigan City, and an Indiana limestone quarry, runs May through September. when Tall Trees first opened, they got a lot of coverage on the local TV, but they didn't have the G-gauge trains in place yet. So that'd be a great Sunday afternoon
It's a nice trip.
day trip.
Yeah.
Church, breakfast, jump in the car, and hodge out to Valparaiso and walk amongst the trees and enjoy the trains.
I think that mention of the Amtrak train might be.
That would be newsworthy because that train might not be around.
Yeah, the Indiana legislature pulled the state funding for that train. Amtrak still runs a 2-day-a-week
Yeah, the Cardinal.
train, the Cardinal through there, but there will not be any daily service to Indianapolis. It's gone.
So you mean it's no longer the Hoosier State? It's now the Hoosier train, or where's your train?
Where's your train?
The
Yeah.
Hoosier Ghost.
Where'd my train go?
Who's your on first?
Who's your train provider?
Yeah. Talking about nice, it's not a day trip, it'd be a weekend trip, but near Detroit, there is a narrow gauge train excursion, private railroad, was built on an old right-of-way of the C&O, and they run narrow gauge. Specifically, the locomotive I ran behind was a Rio Grande K27. And I want to say it's like the Gooseberry Railroad.
Huckleberry?
Huckleberry. And
Who's your Huckleberry?
Huckleberry how?
but happened to be in the Detroit area with friends of mine, and we rode that, and I was very impressed. A lot of excursions, they won't let you anywhere near the locomotive, and we walked right up to it. They're like, "You want to come up inside?" And I'm like, between looking at myself and my buddy Mike, I went, "No, I think we'd have to have somebody squeeze out for the two of us to get in the cab of the locomotive." But I was really impressed with it. It's a nice operation.
Yeah, they got. I think they have 2 locomotives. I think one's White Pass.
Could be.
And the other is DNRG Mud Hen.
Right.
One of the 2 mud hens that are left.
Yes. And it's in beautiful shape, well maintained, and a very nice operation. And qualification for me, cheap.
Affordable, not cheap.
Yeah, going up to see that, and then also to go to Dearborn or
Yeah.
Deerfield.
Yeah.
Go to the museum.
Go to the museum. See the largest North American steam locomotive. Non-operating.
Yet to be verified.
For those of you who have rich children that like to spoil their parents, the 20th Century Railroad Club has announced their Trip K1 private railway car Hollywood Beach is now available for their trip April 29th through May 6th for a mere $2,995 per person, double occupancy. Meals, snacks, beverage service commensurate to the time of day are included en route, and the car is your sleeping facility while in Chicago and New Orleans. 3 nights in the Crescent City, spotted at the NOUPT, which I presume is the Nolans Union Pacific Terminal, for the annual Jazz Fest.
Passenger terminal.
Union Passenger Terminal.
Okay, Union Passenger Terminal. If you got a couple $1,000 laying around and you want to take a rail journey, it's supposed to be a very, very nice piece of rolling stock. And if you go to New Orleans and you don't want to spend all your time at the Jazz Fest, the National World War II Museum's down there, and I've been told that is certainly worth at least an afternoon, if not a whole day. And then when you get done with filling your brain, there are so many great restaurants to fill your stomach.
Yeah, they eat mud bugs down there.
Mud bugs are good eating.
Uh-huh. My father used to use them for bait on the Des Plaines River.
That's true. Crawdads is crawdads no matter what you call them. And, you know, railroad gets into the vocabulary everywhere. when the Charles Street trolley line went on strike, there was a little sandwich shop down there that used to make sandwiches for a nickel. And that's the origin of the po' boy sandwich. They were making them. The owner was making them for a nickel for the streetcar operators. Now, whether you make them with crawdads or shrimp or pieces of catfish, a good po' boy is worth the time to eat it anytime you get your hands on it. You know, and that's just street food. You know, when you get around to some of the restaurants, you know, you can't go to New Orleans without stopping at Café de Monde for coffee and beignets.
That's what they call it. It's like a donut, but lighter.
Yeah, and usually it's sort of square shaped.
Okay.
And if you get it's coated in powdered sugar, and then a lot of places will serve it with a vanilla cream sauce and a chocolate sauce that you can either dip it or pour over it. There's a place on the south, in the immediate south suburbs, called Chuck's Southern Comfort in Burbank on 79th Street, and the first Saturday of the month is beignet breakfast. I believe they also do it at their restaurant in Darien. But fair warning, beignets are addictive.
What good food isn't?
Yeah, what good things in life aren't addictive?
Yes. I mean,
but it's one of the addictions my wife tolerates.
Not your railroad hobby.
You know, and they're the ones that, you know, when you go down there to eat, a lot of the food that you get's blackened.
Yeah, pan-seared.
You know, yeah. Well, they, you know,
And
I'm
spices.
sorry, you know, they were the ones that made it chic, but we know it up here is somebody burned the hell out of it.
Yeah, but it tastes so good.
Hey, Ron, what's going on with you over there?
Actually, writing on what Kevin said, 20th Century has got several smaller tours, and the first one that they got is May 5th and it goes to the Milan Arts and Crafts Fair, which is in the Quad Cities area. It's $99, and it's admission to the Fair and Craft Show, as well as admission to the John Deere Pavilion and the Quad Cities Botanical Center. And then on June 22nd, also by the 20th Century Railroad Club, they have a $60 trip, which is the Galesburg Railroad Days. And that's an all-day affair. And I have a second flyer on it. It's called the Train and Toy Show, in addition, and it's on the 22nd and 23rd, although the club is only going on the 22nd. So it's a train and toy show. It starts at 9 in the morning, runs to 4 on Saturday, and Sunday it starts at 10 in the morning and runs to 3. And it's in the heart of Galesburg. So those two are together. Another, getting back to the 20th Century Railroad Club, they have a 2-night lodging trip to the Henry Ford Museum and Detroit tour.
We
heard about
just
that
talking about that
from John, and the cost on that is $449 per person double, or $579 person single. And they have a docent tour of Detroit, 2 nights lodging at the Holiday Inn, and Friday's dinner, 2 breakfasts, and 1 lunch. And they have a picture of the C&O engine.
Mm-hmm.
They're and that's July 1st through the 20. July 19th to the 21st. Their fourth trip, and each one is in a different month, is the National Railway Museum. And that is for $129. Member discount is available. All museum admissions, hobo luncheon, and train ride through the museum grounds. Their description. The one thing on that, I have to ask other people, where's the national train?
Green
Green
Bay
Bay.
was
Green Bay, okay. So,
on the shores of Lake Michigan.
Michigan.
What's a hobo luncheon? What do you do? Fight over a bottle of wine and a donut?
No, no, no.
Mulligan stew.
Yeah, probably Mulligan. And then, actually, in May, on the same day that they're going to the Milan Arts and Crafts Fair, they got another trip, which was $339 per person for a double and $379 for a single. It's the Southern Illinois Adventure, and it's a one-night lodging, breakfast, and dinner. Northwest Rail Rangers Guide on board. And that's on May 5th. So they got two trips on the same day, both going in opposite directions.
And please visit the Chicago Junction GoFundMe page so we can send all of us to
Yeah.
these events, and we'll report back to you, tell you how good it was.
That is correct.
We'll be there, so you don't have to be.
Oh, okay. You could. Do you want to add something?
We'll get to it in a little
You
bit.
okay.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got
Okay.
it for train days.
I got an email, and I don't know how these guys got my email, but from the Galesburg Railroad Days Train and Toy Show coming in June. It says, it's hard to believe that June 22nd and 23rd will be celebrating the 25th annual Galesburg Railroad Days Train and Toy Show. It will be located in the Galesburg High School Field House. My wife and I did this trip maybe 10 years ago, and thoroughly enjoyed the trip down. We went down Amtrak. There's actually two departures daily to Galesburg. The early one is part of the one of the Zephyrs, but it makes a stop in Galesburg.
California Zephyr.
California Zephyr. And they've got a nice equipment layout, and they were doing yard tours. And if you're going to do that, the minute your feet hit the ground, find out where the sign up is for that, because there's a limited number of those on a daily basis. I think we got down there about 10:30 in the morning, and we were lucky to get the second to the last tour of the yard. And Galesburg is nice because they actually have a hump track there, and you can get to see them using the hump track to sort freight cars. The train and toy show is almost worth the trip by itself. They have dealers coming in from several hundred miles around. It doesn't make any difference what gauge you operate, or whether you're looking for color pieces or accessory pieces. It's worth the time. And the building just happens to be air conditioned, so if you happen to be there in the time frame between like 11:30 and 2 o'clock, when it's getting nice and warm outside, you get to cool down a little. And I hope that restaurant that was down there in the old Swift Packing building is still open, because it was a great restaurant with a very strong rail motif. They took an old REA baggage cart and turned it into the salad bar for the restaurant.
Nice.
So if you could imagine an 8 or 10 foot long, 5 foot wide salad bar.
Do they have a porter to push it around for everybody?
No, it's parked.
Oh.
But as you sit at the tables and you look up, the rails that they used to hang the sides of beef from are still up overhead. You know,
With the hooks hanging.
with the hooks on. It still looks like, with very little effort, it could be turned back into a processing plant. And that does not offend me in the least, because my godfather owned a meatpacking plant and meatpacking operation here in Chicago, and I worked in a butcher shop when I was in high school. And I think it's great repurposing on the building. You know, it's something that most Americans have forgotten.
You know that meat is murder. Very, very tasty murder.
Just remember, like Homer Simpson said, if God didn't want us to eat animals, he would not have made them so tasty.
I still like the T-shirt that says vegetarian is an old Native American word for bad hunter. I've told that to many a Cub Scout when I was teaching them how to shoot a BB rifle.
I think
Anyhow, just Google Galesburg Railroad Days Train and Toy Show, and I'm sure the information will pop up.
And if you are an enthusiast of the Chicago Junction Facebook page, we will post that information there for your viewing pleasure.
And, you know, there's two Amtrak runs that go down on Saturday and Sunday, so you don't have to drive. You can actually sit back, relax, enjoy a cup of coffee, and maybe read a book on the train.
You know, Galesburg, I've been there, I've never driven there, and I've never taken Amtrak there. And I think the last time I went there, you were in Chicago chapter then. That was, that might have been the last excursions I did with Chicago chapter. Because we went to, I can't think of it.
I couldn't do it that time because I had to work.
That's right, you were still yanking the throttle then.
I was punching tickets.
Oh, you were punching tickets. Okay. Because we went to Flag Center and wide the train on Sunday. That was, let's just say,
Interesting.
it was very interesting because it was my end of the train that had to shove onto the cut of cars on the Y.
2 cars, 1 car, that'll do.
No, it was more like, does that car have a shock absorber drawbar? Yeah. Okay. Keep shoving. Fortunately, we had kahunas from the BNSF on the train that day, and it's like, you're a railroad. You guys know what you're doing.
Kick 'em.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Right.
well, you know, everybody's got all these nice stuff with the trips coming up on Amtrak. Did you know that Amtrak and another railroad are in a Twitter fight? Just like Congress is with the president and everybody else.
Everybody's on Twitter.
Everybody's on Amtrak and Norfolk Southern now spar over Twitter comments. Twitter wars are common enough between people, right? Opposing political views, some celebrities, and various social media influences. People, you know, let's face it, everybody has an opinion.
More than one.
Or more. Now, between Amtrak and one of its host railroads, notes that Amtrak and Norfolk Southern have been trading letters about Amtrak tweets the last month, in which the passenger railroad blamed delays on the northbound Crescent on Norfolk Southern freight train interference. That led to a letter to Amtrak, who doesn't listen to anybody anyway.
They wrote him a letter and an email.
And email.
Oh, yeah.
And from NS lawyer saying that the tweets on Amtrak alerts feed was advancing a misleading narrative that operates at the expense of Norfolk Southern's reputation, and that further tweets would mean NS would be forced to consider further action.
Excuse me, the railroad that's known as Nazi Southern is worried about their public image?
Yes. And NS said the delay was actually caused because a sleeping car and dining car decoupled after the train left New Orleans. Amtrak responded with a letter noting that after the initial mechanical issue, the train sustained more than 3 hours of additional delays because of freight trains, and cited 11 incidences of delays that it has suffered because of Norfolk Southern. The journal story notes the underlying and ongoing issue in Amtrak's relationship with its freight railroad hosts, a lack of performance metrics that show how host railroads perform, and the accompanying lack of enforcement of the law giving Amtrak trains preference over freight trains. The most recent ruling in a lengthy legal battle over whose performance metrics would allow them to be developed by Amtrak and the Federal Railroad Administration. The letter from William Herman, Amtrak Vice President, Senior Managing Deputy General Counsel, and Assistant Corporate Secretary,
Graham Poobah,
suggested that Norfolk Southern's further action should take immediate action to improve on-time performance of Amtrak trains on your railroad. Basically coming down, our trains are, you're preventing our freight trains from moving, so we're going to go ahead of you because we have to take care of our customers.
Your train is 3 hours late, but we'll wait for you.
Yeah, that sounds
Let
like
us know when we're coming.
That sounds like an argument between Amtrak's lawyers and Norfolk Southern's lawyers, and it was a slow news day for both of them.
Yeah. Well,
You know who wins that argument, don't you?
The
The
lawyer.
lawyers.
Yes.
that's it.
Sorry, I stole your punchline.
That's the
Send lawyers.
there is a joke about what caused God to create lawyers, but you're not allowed to use it over any media that's transmitted.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a radio and I told the joke, the radio station would lose its license.
Oh, my God. We can't have that. What we do once a month. We'd be out on the streets
Brian.
causing trouble.
Yes.
Brian?
I'm having a brain spasm. There is a former Zephyr dome observation car that somebody took and cut an open platform into.
Yes.
And I saw this and I meant to write it down. It will be running in Chicago, St. Louis coming up soon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Sierra.
Sierra Hotel?
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole portion that for the observation, they cut it all out. So you don't have the nice curve there. You just got a big, nice, rounded platform like you would on the Polar Express.
It's what it
It's exactly what it is.
Yes, and I saw it. It was somebody I saw on Facebook posted it, and I went, "Well, that's going to be expensive." But 5-hour trips from St. Louis to Chicago and back.
Yeah. And I wonder how much it's going to cost.
And you know what?
No, because let's see. I have the story here on the New River Gorge trains.
Oh, they are running.
They're not going to run.
They're not going to run.
No, they ended up losing. They had to pay $140,000 more. In fact, that's what their loss was $140,000. And since that trip is run, Amtrak did 2 more increases in costs. They're doing everything to keep the cars off.
The shifting metrics of Amtrak.
Yeah,
Today it costs this much, but tomorrow it's probably going to cost more.
that is correct.
I
mean, they're just. But there's some good news.
good news.
Yeah, one museum that's really been having a hard time.
Right.
No, the Indiana Transportation
right.
Museum.
Noblesville.
Right. Well, they're close to purchase of a railroad.
Yeah.
Yep. The displaced Indiana Transportation Museum may soon have a new home, according to a notice published in the Federal Register. The Logansport and Eel River Railroad is seeking a waivers for a requirement to put a section of out-of-service track back into service. The Federal Railroad Administration filing says the railroad, which currently exists in name only, is seeking the relief as part of the purchase proceeding with the Indiana Transportation Museum, which has already made a down payment on 1.6 miles of track. ITM Acting Chairman Les McConnell confirmed the purchase proceedings to Trains Newswire. McConnell says ITM, which was evicted in July 2018 from its home of more than 50 years in Noblesville, is hoping the short line will be suitable home for the museum's equipment, which in itself is in jeopardy following the eviction from Noblesville. McConnell says the museum, which forced to sell or scrap equipment in the fallout from the eviction, he hopes the short line in Logansport will preserve the museum's identity and its equipment. It's all survival. According to the filings, Logansport and Eel River Railroad is seeking relief from federal requirements requiring signage, notices at 6th grade crossings on the line, and notices that the rail line in question is once again back in service. Railroad is also seeking an answer regarding whom the Logansport or Eel River are connecting Toledo, Peoria, and Western, a Genesee, Wyoming company, is responsible for replacing a switch which used to connect the short line to the TP&W. Logansport and Eel River is arguing that the switch was removed without permission, and TP&W wants $86,500 for a new switch. Jeez, I thought they could go to Atlas, get one
Hey,
a lot cheaper.
go back to the old days.
Yeah.
Just go back there and put it in.
They could get it done cheaper by R.J. Corman.
In the filing, Logansport and Eel River states the railroad is ready to reinstall the signage once a decision has been made about the responsibility for the switch. ITM was evicted as part of a long, complicated battle between the museum and the city of Noblesville. I think it was pretty short myself.
Yeah. It wasn't very, lasted
Yeah.
about a year.
Yeah. ITM was evicted as part of a long, complicated battle between the museum and the city. Museum operated on 35 miles of isolated track, which it did not own. Following the court-ordered eviction, the city still had some pieces there on the property, though some of the equipment had been sold or moved to other locations by truck. Connell says the purchase of the Logansport Eel River trackage, the museum can own its own trackage for the first time and become more secure. We are trying to find a place to go with our own railroad. McConnell says, recalling how ITM came to be in contact with Shortline, we don't want to be caretakers anymore. McConnell said he was confident the deal be reached with the Shortline for the acquisition of the trackage within the next 2 weeks. No timeline is available to say whether the request to the FRA will be heard.
Other than the 587, does the museum have any equipment left? Last I saw, they were cutting up. They cut up a former Milwaukee Road switcher,
Yes,
and
but that was a parts engine. In all fairness, that was a parts engine.
Okay.
They have an SW1 Monon that's fully operational. And they do have other pieces. The diesels were sold to, there's another, they've got the diesels and they're getting them all painted up and everything.
How are they getting them off the museum property?
They were trucked out. The railroad that bought them trucked them out.
Wow.
The short line bought them.
You know, we talk about the problems that tourist operations are having, you know, getting their property seized by trail folks. There's another problem, and that's in the Model Railroad Club arena, where a lot of the older, long-standing clubs are having problems either getting evicted from their homes or being remodeled out of their homes. There's a Model Railroad Club, the Garfield Clarendon Model Railroad Club up on the north side of Chicago, that is in a Park District field house. And they have been there for a lengthy period of time, and now there is discussion of remodeling the field house, and it's uncertain whether they're going to be allowed to stay or not.
That is actually one of the oldest clubs in the Chicago area. It originally started out in the Garfield Park, what do you call it?
Conservatory?
No, not the conservatory. The
Field house.
The field house.
Yeah.
And they moved, I believe, in the early 70s from Garfield Park up to Clarendon Park up on the North Shore.
Yeah. Yeah, according at a meeting, one railroad club member asked the possibility of reducing the cost of the remodel and was met with claps from the audience. I guess a lot of the people in the community are 100% behind keeping the club there, as well as the alderman who on the alderman said he wouldn't say if he supports a renovation or a they're also talking about the possibility of tearing down the field house. So if they tear down the field house, that would be it for the club, and depending on how extensive the remodeling is, it could be curtains for the club as well. Since 1963, the nonprofit club's home has been the Clarendon Park Community Center. The last anchor left from the site's early history is a public beach, and subsequent rebirth as a recreational center for teens. In 1972, a previous version of the railroad came to an end when the field house was remodeled, but the current railroad is the club's largest to date and one of the largest model railroads in the country, according to the club. It takes about 30 minutes for a train to run through the whole layout, and anywhere from 15 to 25 trains can run at the same time, all independently operated. The club has more than 30 members ranging in age of from 14 to folks in their 70s, and I'm going to guess that the preponderance of those people are in their 70s. You know, this whole demographic is aging, although I'm sure there will be people that will disagree with me on that. But I was also reading about another railroad club in Brooklyn that's getting evicted from their locations. So one of the ways that people get involved, especially young kids in railroading, obviously, is model railroad. You know, going to a model railroad club and seeing trains.
You know what? I can speak to that very issue. First off, there's a very famous railroad club. It's the New England, Berkshire, and Western in upstate New York that is going through that very... They're going to renovate the building, so the layout is coming out, and they don't know when and if they will get additional space. Now, I was involved in a club in the Chicago area that had... Essentially, the building was donated to the town, and the town wanted to get rid of it, and my guess was knock it down and put up condos. But the people in the neighborhood said, you're not getting rid of our library, and you're not getting rid of our model railroad club. To which the village said, well, we'll put the library across the street in the school, and, you know, you can have a room in the school for the library. And they said, no, you're not going to do that. About $3 million renovation on the building. Totally gutted the building and rebuilt as far as electrical, HVAC, put in an elevator, which was a very nice. The club, we did keep the layout for a short time, designed a new one, and tore that one down and built a new layout in the same space. But it took a lot to maintain the club through that transition time. And it was nice to see the people in the neighborhood come out and support the club. Of course, at the meeting that this occurred with the village board, when I heard that, I immediately turned to one of my associates, a friend of ours, Brian Gary, and I said, how come we're not getting revenue from these people? He said, John, don't worry about it. They're supporting us. I said, okay. But it can be a very difficult time for a club to do a transition like that.
Well, there's a club in Cincinnati going through that right now, and has been. The last few years, Cincinnati Union Terminal has been finally become part of the city museum section. And a lot of the museums had moved into it, and they found out there was some structural damage being done that really needed to be taken care of. So for the last 3 years, they've been redoing the inside of CUT, and the Cincinnati Railroad Club had been meeting in that museum in CUT since it started in 1938. And when they went to go back, the bank has taken over the leasing of spaces to the clubs, and so they presented the Cincinnati Railroad Club with a lease that basically 2 years would wipe them out completely. The museum feels that they'll be able to take care of the room up there and do it. So right now, Cincinnati's looking for a place where it can set up its library and have meetings and such. They have been having meetings, but they're looking for a more permanent place now. They tried negotiating with it, and the bank would, is not, no, we set these rates. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, that's what the current rate is, and this is what you're going to pay.
Yeah, and I mean, the room that they had was even better than what the 20th Century Club had for train watching. You could go up there. I mean, you could see Queensgate Yard. You could watch everything. You even see Amtrak coming in. Amtrak they finally did let Amtrak back in there.
Really?
Yeah. So Amtrak's back in CUT. But I feel sorry for a lot of my friends. I mean, that was the place. A lot of excursions started out of there. The one track that still had the platform. Because that's the only thing the only thing missing from the original station were the track platforms.
Right.
And unfortunately, one mosaic got destroyed because of that. That was the one that they had on the back wall of the map of the United States with the time zones. That mosaic was destroyed. All the other were taken out and put in the airport.
Okay.
All the other mosaics. So, and they've been restoring, and with a lot of the restorations, because of one of our late members, Gibson Youngblood. He was Mr. CUT. He organized dumpster diving and saved records that would have been just trash heaps. Pictures. He had a program that went for a little over an hour, and you go through 7 carousels in that hour. Of all the pictures, he's got the building pictures, everything he put together, and it's a wonderful program. I managed a friend of mine had videotaped it and put it on DVD. So I have, when I get melancholy, I'll put it in, listen to Gib. The building, but stuff like that, like you say, it's a shame that you lose it.
Oh, Kevin, you addressed it with your group. You know, the fact that you guys own that. Are you leasing or are you?
No,
own?
we ate peanut butter sandwiches for a long time. We own our buildings free and clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I've been doing this show, I guess 3 years ago. John brought me on board, and it never goes more than 2 months before we're reading a story or hearing a story about some club somewhere trying to keep a roof over their head.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's but it is something. When we try to, like I say, how are we going to bring in the next generation?
One way is the All-American Railroad Show
Yeah.
in
It's in
LaGrange.
Lyons, LaGrange at the Lyons Township High School. And it's Saturday, March 23rd, and it goes from 9 to 5. And that is one of the best ones. They have every gauge.
Yeah.
layout.
Well, yeah, Midwest Rails will be there with the G gauge.
That's this weekend, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, this weekend.
Won't get on, but this won't get on the air before then.
Yeah. And then also Chicago chapter will be
Mhm.
there. Larry will be there, manning the table and such.
I've worked that show as a member of a club many years. That was going back to 1983, I think, was the first year I worked the show. And
Yeah, you guys finally got me out there a couple times.
that show was sponsored by a railroad club in the high school and associated with the local chapter of the National Model Railroad Association. Unfortunately, I believe the club in the school is gone because the teacher who was you have to have a supervisor, a sponsor, moderator, he retired, and I don't believe they have a club or a group anymore in the school.
But yeah, so if people can try and make it. And speaking of people who aren't here, Ron Smallin, I do have a little bit of news with him.
Our street railway aficionado, Mr. Ron Smolin.
Yes.
Our polka king.
The Milwaukee streetcar plans to open 2 extensions by the Democratic Convention. Eyes a third. Up in Milwaukee, the first extension of Milwaukee's streetcar, the Hop, should be in service by the time the city hosts the Democratic National Convention, and a short second extension connecting the system to the city's convention center is in the planning stage. Remember how Ron, when he talked about the route set, and he says, can't figure out why they just didn't take it to the convention center? Well, now it's going to be the second extension going there. I mean, we're only talking about 0.3 miles.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it's really...
Get some snap track and go right in there.
That's it, The work will begin in September on the planned 0.3-mile extension to the convention center, which will connect the current west end of the line.
Oh, wait, they first have to hire consultants to plan the route.
And lawyers. The extension, the additional extension to connect the system to the FISERV Forum.
Huh?
Yeah, the FISERV Forum, the arena which will host the Democratic Convention, is under discussion. The city has set aside $20 million for that project, although it failed to win a hoped-for federal grant for an additional $20 million in December 2018.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Work will resume in June on the first extension to the Hop, the loop in front of loop to the lakefront, most of which has already been built and is scheduled to open in 2020. The 2.1-mile Phase 1 Hop opened in November of 2018.
And they're still giving free rides here at that casino.
Yes, they are.
And it doesn't even go to the casino.
Now, for those who love steam fun, and this is going to be interesting because I'm going to travel there to see this one. back in the spot for 611. It's going to be making its run to the Keystone State. And they're going to go to the Strasburg Railroad.
Really?
Yes, the last 2 weekends of September and the first 2 weekends of October. And they're calling it a reunion of steam. Because the last locomotive that was totally rebuilt was a Norfolk Western 480.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to be steamed together. And tickets from starting with $5 for blowing the whistle in the 611.
Is that what you call it?
To $750 for putting your hand on the throttle.
How much for sitting on the engineer's lap? Come on. and doing all those things.
So it's to experience a once in a lifetime steam train extravaganza.
I don't doubt that.
All right, Brian, get your head of steam back up.
As the Strasburg Railroad welcomes the iconic 611 steam passenger locomotive to join our own locomotive number 475 for 4 weekends of special events and whistleblowing, photo sessions, behind-the-scene tours, family-themed events, exclusive in-cab opportunities, and where passenger cars can operate and fire. Passengers can operate and fire the J-Class 611 or Strasburg's M-Class 475.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Beautiful Strasburg Railroad, where the big ones run, run, run.
Starting September 28th and 29th, Norfolk and Western's Steam Reunion. And October 4th and 6th, the Railfan Photography Extravaganza with Laro Productions. And on the October 12th to 14th, Rail and Road Transportation Evolution. What I'm waiting for is to see Norfolk Western pulling in reverse at 25 miles an hour, the train out to intercourse interchange, run around its train and pull it back in to Strasburg.
Is there a special ticket for that?
Yes. On October 19th and 20th, at the throttle of the Norfolk Western Steam, where everybody will have all have their time on the throttle.
Oh boy.
Or firing.
They can hustle the engine around?
Yep. Hustle the engine. You could just hustle it all.
Hustle it a little bit longer. Hi there, I'm an engine hustler.
Now, during the 611 event, for the first time, there will be a parking fee at Strasburg. Will be assessed at the gate for the first and third weekends, the 28th, 29th, and the 12th and 14th. These dates for which parking fee will be assessed may expand if the event days are added on either side of the respective weekends.
Does it say how much it will be?
Yeah, $5.
That's reasonable.
If you do not have a ticket for the event at the day, if you didn't buy an advance ticket,
Right.
it'll cost you $20
Well, what are the advance?
with a $15 voucher that you're given should you use to get the event.
So it's still $5.
Yeah,
Well, what's the if you buy a ticket in advance? What do the tickets cost?
well, starting at $5
Oh, okay.
up to $200.
Really?
Yeah,
Just like that.
$750.
So
If you want to pull the throttle, $750.
Where's all this money going to?
Well, basically, it will be for bringing the engineer the cost and fuel. Well, They get a good deal on coal for
Plus
some
there's-
reason there.
Plus
Yeah.
the engineer's lunch.
Many years ago,
we don't eat cheap.
I was doing an excursion, and a friend of Brian and ours was working as the conductor on the train because, well, he just happened to have one that he used 5 days, uniform 5 days a week he used. And my end of the train was first class, but behind us there were additional first class cars that I was not responsible for. But our friend Gary goes back and he says, comes back and says, John, Jack, a mutual friend of ours, he's in the back of the observation car. He wants to see you. He knows you're here. Oh, okay. I said, I got a few minutes going back and BS with my friend Jack and our buddy Gary and the actual person in charge of those last two cars. She came back. What are you doing? You're not supposed to be back here. And I said, well, first off, I'm one of the board members. I'm also in charge of first class, and this is a longtime friend of mine. Well, you're not supposed to be back here. I went, oh, okay. You don't know who I am. Well, she found out. But our friend who was sitting back there now is a retired doctor, and at that time they were having a $5 raffle to ride in the cab of a locomotive. You remember those? Well, this essentially made her be quiet and go away because our friend Jack said, oh, you're doing a raffle. We're doing a raffle. How much is it to ride the cab of the locomotive? She says, well, we're not doing that. And he says, well, how much to ride the cab? Well, it would be $500.
Somebody wants to talk to you really bad.
Yeah, they can wait. It's my older brother. So she says, well, it would be $500. To which she went, okay, well, who do I make the check out to? Here's the check. Now my friends can stay here and talk to me for as long as I want.
He's persistent.
Yes, he is.
Why'd you hang up on me all those times?
Yeah, it's my older brother.
Maybe that's a good cue to wrap things up.
Well,
Boy, he is persistent.
Would you hand me that, please?
Well, we got to have a new rule now.
I do apologize. I thought the phone was
phones.
off.
No phones unless it's train whistles.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I took care of that.
Before we
right
wrap
there.
it up,
Stosh,
Yes.
you brought
Oh.
in this magnificent. Why did you bring it in?
Mainly to show members it's an
taunt us.
HO, big boy, and it's done to the modern, the way the 4014 will look once it's exhibited at the anniversary of the Golden Spike, 150 years, and it's an HO model by Broadway Limited. And in the original, or in the new UP conversion.
Equipped with rolling thunder.
Yes. Yes.
and
Whoa!
and how severely did this hurt the piggy bank?
Six
not.
bills?
It was under that. It was slightly under. I think it went over with the tax.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was $580. But it sure. I probably shouldn't say this, but it sure beat the price at Des Plaines, which was $700. He took no discount off.
Now
of
let
it.
me guess where you got this. Was
Lombard.
This on, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a great hobby shop, by the way.
Really? I wouldn't know.
No, the big boy, does have good lines.
Oh, fantastic locomotives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, you know more about steam than probably anybody because you worked on it. My question to you is, these were kind of restricted when they were built because of curvatures and weight limits on bridges and such.
They had no problem where they were going. Remember, they were built in New York.
Right.
They traveled the old Erie trackage to make it out west because they originally were 6 foot. So they had good clearances.
And I understand they came through proviso.
once they got here, I don't know what
I
happened.
guess they didn't hump them.
But considering that railroads have changed so much with track and structure over the years with heavier axle loadings and completely new bridges, is there really any restriction on any of this equipment from, say, the 1940s?
Yes,
Still.
yes.
And what might that be?
Well, like again, they're looking at weight. They're figuring, a lot of misconceptions about the pounding on the rails.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when the 4449 came and we did the trip out to Michigan
Right.
in 2009, and we were delayed really big time, but we hit the Norfolk Western track. Amtrak said, you can travel at 70 mile an hour
At track speed.
at track speed. But when we hit the Norfolk Western track, it's oh no, we only run our steam locomotives at 40
miles an hour.
And then they stopped us for every freight that came our way. So, now this one, yes, it's going to be on UP trackage, so UP knows what's going to happen.
Well, let's see. Again, you weren't with the club in 93.
No.
We ran the Challenger on a Mopac
Mm-hmm.
at track speed.
Yeah.
Of course, Steve Lee, he still is kind of, where's the roof?
Yeah. Now, I had not joined the club at that time, but I was up at Great Lakes, so me and one of my running mates up there, we went down and we caught it at Dalton Yard.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got transferred out to Long Beach,
Oh, yeah.
and then I caught it when it came into L.A., when it came down through Cajon. And I took a few of the chiefs with me, and they're going, "Why do you like trains?" And they're going, "Look at this." And they saw that coming and go, "That's kind of neat."
Well,
All right.
Oh, Kevin, I think Kevin had something.
Yeah,
to add.
just I've spoken in the past about the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, and I got an email from them, and they have multiple events in April, May, and June. Mother's Day, they've got Mother's Day Moscato, which is a train ride and wine tasting. They've got Ales on Rails, May 4th. They got Father's Day Brews on Saturday, June 15th. They've got Murder Mystery Trains. They've got Canvas and Wine Trains. And if you're going to be anywhere near Akron, Ohio, go to the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. Their website is news, N-E-W-S, at cvsr.com. They run through the Cuyahoga National Forest. Beautiful scenery. There is one tree out there that does have an eagle's nest in it. They run steam. They run diesel. Nice trip. If you're a pin collector, they've got a very distinctive pin. They got a nice looking patch. Nice scenic railroad. Good way to spend an afternoon or a day. And,
what state is that?
Ohio.
Okay.
And not all
It's really good.
and not all that far from the Air Force Museum in Dayton at Wright Pat.
Yeah, well, you're talking basically corner to corner.
Not that far. It's a day's trip.
Yeah, it's a day for it to get down there.
Not that far. If you're in Chicago and you're going to Ohio, get the most out of your mileage.
All right.
Do they have a Devo museum in Akron? Because that's where Devo came
from.
No, but they do have the B-29 boxcar sitting in a hangar,
Under
sitting
that.
sitting on its own landing gear, and it could be put back
In service.
into service, which is something the Enola Gay will never be able to do. And we won't get into that because I will say things that will cause our transmitting license to be revoked.
All right. In the world of happy anniversaries, we have two more that should be mentioned. Along with the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike, we have two other 150th anniversaries. One being Mount Washington Cog Railway, which opened in 1869 and is the first mountain cog railway in the world.
Really?
And they still have their original locomotive, Old Pepper Ass. Pepper Sass.
Oh,
excuse me.
Pepper, not Pecker Wood.
That's it. And it's actually, they've cleaned it up, beautiful restoration. And they're going to travel it down to Philadelphia, Scranton, and Washington, D.C., taking it on tour. And then what they did also with it is pull out a second locomotive. So instead of just the first trip in the morning up the mountain, they're doing two trips with steam. And the other is in 1869, George Westinghouse put the first patent in for the automatic air brake. And I believe...
And up until now, it's the standard for braking, but we've got electronic braking coming in.
Yes. And we've been working on that for a long time.
Right.
When
I can't talk about that.
and
Will we lose our license?
okay.
Let's just say one system won't work with the other.
Well, that's been a problem. They're trying to make compatibility.
Yeah, well, when it's the same manufacturer making both systems, you would hope that they would work together, and
But
they don't.
don't worry, PTC is going to take care of everything.
Yes, it is. With that happy note, I want to say for those that are interested, it's an early announcement in May. Turns out the Park Ridge Library on May 10th is going to have a movie night downstairs. They got a room that seats 90 people, and they're going to be showing The Iron Horse.
Okay.
The silent classic done by John Ford, and it's the first movie that actually shows the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, of what they thought it would look like while building it. On April 27th, the Chicago Area Garden Railway Society, or KAGRS for short, will be having their potluck and movie night, and they'll be showing Union Pacific.
Just saw that on Retro.
Yep. Okay, so other than that, gentlemen, I think we're coming to the end.
I think so.
It's about time. Thank you all for listening. Remember, if you guys have a subject you'd like to hear us about and see if we actually know something about, let us know on our Facebook page, and we can bring it up.
If you have anything nice to say about us, please do. If you don't bother.
We get on ourselves enough as it is.
Start hitting the brakes, Brian. That bumper post is getting close.
Happy rails to you all. As our express comes into the station, we want to thank you for joining us on our journey to the wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and can be listened to on the web at www.windycityhometown.com, where you can listen to tonight's broadcast and all our past episodes. Also, some of the other fine programs that are being offered. This is your announcer, Brian Ballou. Till next month, we again journey to Chicago Junction.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Wednesday, March the 20th, the year 2019. Chicago Junction was produced and directed by John DeVito, and our special thanks to the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, March the 20th, the year 2019. Until next time, friends, please be safe, and thanks for listening.